to be no actual punishment for it. So should Trump do anything about it?
Well, I mean, I guess he could show up and continue to show what this case was all about in the first place. And that is, it was for a political talking point. This case should have never been brought. It was brought by a partisan prosecutor. If Donald Trump weren't Donald Trump and he weren't running for president, this case would never have been charged with felonies this way. They took their jobs in public service and used them for political ends instead of using all of their time to throw the bad people in New York, which there are plenty of them on the streets, in jail. That's the real lasting impact of this, the abuse of the system for political purposes when New York City is descending into a hellhole right now. It was all done so they could call him a convicted felon during the campaign.
What's going on, guys? So I'm sure a lot of you all have already heard that Donald Trump does have a sentencing scheduled for January 10th. Okay, this is literally a couple days away. However, he's not gonna have any punishments. Isn't that really strange? It almost defeats the purpose of it. Judge Juan Merchan out there in Woke Behind New York, okay, this corrupt Democrat operative here, he's stated that, well, I can't just throw it out because of all this presidential immunity stuff because, well, you know, it's really just gonna undermine the rule of law and all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm not really gonna punish Trump. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever seen because it's extremely contradictory. If you sentence him but don't punish him, then people are still gonna feel the same way. Take a look at additional details here.
10 days before being sworn in to be president of these United States, Donald Trump will face sentencing for his having been found guilty of 34 counts in New York of falsifying business records, allegedly to conceal $130,000 in hush money payments to adult film star and director Stormy Daniels. But there is some good news here for the president-elect. Let's go to CNN's Kara Scannell. Kara, what is the judge in the case saying?
Yeah, Jake. So the judge is sentencing Donald Trump on January 10th, but the judge is also saying that given the practical considerations of this issue, that it's 10 days before Donald Trump is about to be sworn in as the next president of the United States, that he says that he is likely, he says, you know, he's inclined to not sentence Trump to any incarceration and that his sentence would be one of unconditional discharge, which in real language means that there wouldn't be any sort of penalty. There would be no time served in any jail or prison. There would be no probation that Trump would be required to abide by. It would just be that the case is over, the judgment is entered, and that would allow Trump to then begin to try to appeal the conviction itself. Certainly good news for him that the biggest concern that he could face potential jail time, potential other sort of remedies against him, the judge signaling here that he will not sentence Trump to any incarceration, will not put any restrictions on him, including probation, as he assumes his second term as president. Jake?
And we should note that Stephen Chung, who will be the White House communications director in President Trump's next term, issued a statement saying, quote, today's order by the deeply conflicted acting Justice Merchan and the Manhattan DA witch hunt is a direct violation of the Supreme Court's immunity decision and other longstanding jurisprudence. He calls for he says the Constitution demands it be immediately dismissed.
So definitely a head scratcher. Now, I will say that this is obviously good for Trump in some ways because obviously we don't want him to go to jail or have probation or, you know, any stupid thing that they want, which obviously their goal would inevitably be to see Trump in jail and, you know, have a bunch of memes and basically try to roast him as this jail president and say he better not drop the soap, whatever nonsense that these idiotic, cruel people think that basically would be the equivalent of the people burning innocent men and women during these Salem witch trials. But even though Donald Trump is getting sentenced here, of course, that's not enough for these woke leftists and Democrat propagandists because on MSDNC, they are freaking out. By they, I mean Joy Reid and this entire panel of guests that she has here because they feel like Judge Juan Merchan is some sort of hero even, which is totally ridiculous. Take a look.
I want to say I am angry, and if anybody's watching this right now is angry, you're allowed to be angry. But you're not angry at Judge Maran. Be angry appropriately and lay the blame at the feet of Donald Trump, the Supreme Court of the United States, because the arc of justice has been crushed and flattened by the weight of the Oval Office, not because of the dignity or the integrity of that office, but because of the deceit by which Donald Trump made it back into that Oval Office. And this is why people angry by this outcome should say there is no true justice anymore, because you and I both know that if this was someone else, Joy, this outcome would have been different. There would have been a sentence held in abeyance. There would have been something that had teeth to it, but this is also spitting in the face of jurors that sat for more than 7 weeks. The original grand jurors that returned an indictment, and then the jurors that sat for 7 weeks and took in this evidence and rendered a verdict of guilty.
This as the only case left. Only the state of New York has even tried to hold Donald Trump accountable. And so we're down to Judge Maran being the one and only hero here.
As we talk about what didn't happen over the last 4 years, was looking at the command and control architecture, and I know that sounds like fancy. It's just who the bad guys were in the communication line and really leading the charge. But the second thing was the people that were actually involved in January 6th. And my fear going forward is that if we only have one judge standing up right now and everybody else folded, we weren't aggressive enough in going after the bad actors there. I still can't wrap my arms around the fact that the facts and data identified weren't more of a factor in the election, but it just means that a majority of Americans just didn't care. And it's something that I think that's been the struggle for me in some respects.
Oh, same here. I mean, between that and Americans not caring that it let 1 million people die of COVID, the fact that most voters didn't care about that, it blows my mind to this day.
You dumb bitch.
So you can't believe voters didn't care more about January 6th and the pandemic. Well, I hate to break it to you, they did care about it. They cared about the fact that a bunch of innocent Americans have been taken as political prisoners because you guys are working as a arm for the radical leftists. Americans do care about that. They don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that the pandemic, they tried to force vaccinations on people. They tried to remove people from their job, get people literally fired. You couldn't go to freaking grocery stores, but we got to keep the liquor stores open, and all these cherry picking, like the celebrities, like Obama's throwing a massive ass party with freaking Jay-Z and Beyonce there, but you couldn't go to your granny's funeral because you might put other people in danger. That's the reason why people cared about the pandemic, just not in the way that you thought that they would. These people are basically mad as hell that the American people aren't dumber than they thought that they were. Now, I want to go ahead and react to this CNN panel where these folks are basically, again, melting down. There's a couple people to balance out the panel, but of course, the two black dudes are the most emotionally unhinged and sour and soft and sweet dudes on the panel saying, oh, it's so not fair. How could you be convicted of 34 counts and not suffer any consequences? These people are pathetic. Let's go ahead and react to them.
By the judge here to give people who want Trump to have consequences a conviction that is upheld, but not have to deal with, a sentence which, frankly, was unlikely to actually happen given that he's about to be the president of the United States.
No, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. I think this is a slap in the face to the judicial system. We tell the jurors when they come into that room that your job is very important. This is very serious. We expect them to pour through the information, which they did. They came back with a decision, and now the judge is saying, essentially, it doesn't matter. You found them guilty, but I'm not going to assess any penalty at all. I'm not saying you had to put Trump in jail. That's not likely or reasonable.
No, that's what you want. Keep it real, bruh. First-time offender, but I'm sure that's what you want. I see all over the internet people posting these fake AI photos of Trump in prison. It's like a freaking wet dream for them. Okay, they could practically not hold the freaking jizz in because of how excited they are to see their beat-off material, which is Trump in a orange jumpsuit.
But there are fines that could have happened, up to $170,000 in fines. Why not assess that and say you were found guilty? Here's a consequence so America can know that if you do something wrong, there will be a penalty to pay.
Brian?
Listen, I think what we're going to learn through this
this case more than anything else is the most helpful to President Trump's election. Because when you saw the indictment take place, you saw a lot of money come in, you saw the party consolidate against, around President Trump, and that was a good thing. And remember, the original purpose of what at least Trump world felt that this was happening was to try to damage President Trump in his presidential run. Hopefully this will take him off the sideline. Democrats were all over the country saying, if you look at the polls, he's going to lose this much Republican support if we can just get this conviction, just this conviction. And it backfired.
Yeah, including on the news. They kept saying that on CNN and MSDNC. Yeah, according to the polls, this might be just the edge we need, right? Like, it was all over, and unfortunately for them, it failed.
Around him. So I'm not surprised when we get to the very end that it just turned out to be a farce from, it's a farce at the end, just like it was a farce from the very beginning.
Fact.
It was a witch.
But
It was
the
a witch
jurors,
hunt
I mean,
from the very
to
beginning.
Dante's point, there was a jury trial. And
Yeah.
he was convicted.
But he was convicted in what really was a witch trial. I mean, the whole thing from the very beginning was politically motivated. And like you said, I mean, during the election, we saw how the American public felt about it. They felt that it didn't matter. And my question is, why even have him appear if the judge has already made a decision that there isn't going to be any kind of fine, there's not going to be a probation, there's not going to be any jail time?
It's like a symbolic victory. They just got their ass beat in the election. All their efforts failed. He got presidential immunity. They failed to assassinate him. They couldn't take him off the ballot. Like, there's so many failures in a row. The people turned against him. Everything they did backfired, and Trump ended up getting more donations, more money, more support. I know people in real life and on the internet, and obviously Trump won the election. So this is obviously true that people turned against everything that the radical leftists were doing. So now the only thing that they have left is to get some sort of symbolic victory and to legitimize the fact that they had these court proceedings by saying, well, at least he's a convicted felon. Like, because technically you don't really count as a convicted felon until sentencing, which in my opinion, Donald Trump should be trying to sue each and every single network who is going out here calling him a convicted felon, because he doesn't even qualify unless the sentencing actually happens. But it's definitely about some sort of symbolic victory for the radical leftists.
What's the point?
He said he can appear virtually,
Right,
which again,
right.
you're giving that concession. I understand it's the incoming president of the United States, but I don't want the point to be lost that there was a jury trial where that jury sit through and heard evidence, and whether or not Trump should have been charged, that's not what we're talking about. He was, and he was found guilty based on the evidence. So you can't ignore that and say it was a political witch.
A jury literally can make any decision that they want, regardless of evidence. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't know why people try to pretend like the jury system is some perfect system. Everybody knows that somebody could just go up there and say, I don't like this person, they're guilty, or they're a woman and I'm a woman, so I don't want to convict this person, or, I like the way this person looks. Like, I don't like the court system. Anybody can say anything and do whatever the hell they want on a jury, so it doesn't matter what these idiots try to pretend like it's some sort of infallible system. I can see it if it was like a computer or a robot or AI or something that's really going to truly objectively assess everything. But the fact that we're talking about humans in a partisan place, which is New York, which is one of the most partisan places besides California, this is a stupid and foolish argument to make.
Not because a jury said he did something wrong, but now the judge is saying he won't be punished.
The judge, I mean, he is not saying that the jury's verdict is invalid. He's just saying, of the options I have available to me, I'm going to choose the one that has basically no penalty. Isn't that an option that would have been available to him anyway?
No, I mean, I don't know of an option where someone is convicted of 34 felonies and at the end of it you say, okay, all right, we got you, but there's nothing that's going to happen to you as a result. That's just not how our legal system works, and we don't want people to think it works that way.
First-time offender, no priors.
For all of the talk of Donald Trump being the victim of the weaponization of our criminal legal system, he has consistently been treated more generously than the average American would. To the point just made, who do you know who's been convicted on 34 felony counts, doesn't even have to pay a fine, to say nothing of some prison time?
Well, who else would have ever been charged in the circumstances?
Nobody. We know that Trump did. So I looked it up just to confirm. Every last one of these charges came after Trump said he was running again. every single one of them, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to try to pretend as though these are normal charges. This was an unprecedented charge, and they bumped it up to felony charges, which Alvin Bragg is notorious for taking things from felony down to misdemeanor. For Trump, he did the opposite. How much evidence do we need that this was partisanship?
That's how we treat white-collar criminals in our country. They walk away scot-free. This has been traditional. This isn't any surprise to us.
Well, they don't. After they've been convicted, they don't walk away scot-free. They have to have some. There has to be some consequence, whether it is a financial or some combination of.
But it's
of
consistently
financial
smaller than any other type of criminal.
Or some prison time. And so here's a classic example. And by the way, this has been appealed on at least one occasion. I mean, he was convicted of things that a court has found beyond this trial court to be a perfectly valid thing to be convicted of in the state of New York. And so,
according to who? If you're saying for the first time ever, then yeah, everybody at the time, including on CNN, said for the first time they've never seen charges like this before. So to say it's perfectly valid, yeah, in your mind, but obviously the defense team of Trump and the people who support Trump think otherwise.
for all this talk about a witch hunt, weaponization, no one can plausibly dispute that he committed the crimes that he was convicted of. They may not like that he was prosecuted, but the fact is, he did the things that he was convicted of.
Steve Chung is saying...
in the Democratic, he wouldn't have got convicted in any other city that is a Republican state or even slightly leaning moderate city. It's a jury of Democrats.
Justice
But
system.
Brian,
It is what
doesn't
it
that
is.
undermine your very point? If you're suggesting that Republicans would have let him off, isn't that in itself political?
Defense counsel
It's
got to
very,
choose
very
those
political.
jurors,
But that's
those
my
jurors,
point. Is
Yeah,
Trump has broken all the...
You know what it is honesty, which the Democrats don't know anything about. He's basically saying, like, well, yeah, in a place where they're going to look at things differently, be it for political reasons or not, they're going to have a different perspective. Basically, the Democrats want Trump to be guilty. The Republicans don't. So they're clearly going to look at things differently. What the Democrats are trying to pretend is that it doesn't matter where Trump is at, it's going to be fair. But these are the same people who are denigrating the Supreme Court and trying to literally overturn and impeach and remove Supreme Court justices. So they don't care about the legal system. They only care about winning and punishing Trump and screwing over the Republican electorate and the conservatives.
These barriers, and he continues to do it. But now the Democrats try to do it with the weaponization of our judicial system, and it just backfired.
My question is, why not just take the win? There's no consequences to this. Just take the win and move on.
A small brain Abby Phillip here is, I don't know if she's actually really this dumb or if she's just having a moment or she just doesn't give a dang, but because they want to punish Trump symbolically, they want to roast him, they want to denigrate his legacy. Would you want some BS felony charges on you, Abby? Is what, well, I guess since I won't be punished for it, there's literally laws that prevent you from doing certain things as a convicted felon. But Abby's pretending like she doesn't know this. I'm pretty sure that she is an attorney as well, or I don't know if she's currently licensed, but pretty much all of these people get their law degree, and she's playing dumb, like one of the dumbest dodo brains I've ever seen.
Trump's team is saying there should be no sentencing. President Trump will continue to fight against these hoaxes until they're all dead. But at the end of the day, to Mondare's point, Trump is coming out on the upside of this in the sense that there are no consequences here.
Except that he still is a criminal.
Exactly.
Because he wants to erase the criminal from, from his record.
What about the other 3 jurisdictions in which he was indicted, right? The dozens of other felony counts for withholding, refusing to produce classified documents that he stole from the...
So as you can see, the reason why this dude keeps bringing up all of these ridiculous talking points that makes you want to close the damn video out is because he is a former New York congressman. So for those of you guys who are wondering who the hell is this guy, why is he such a Democrat shill, that's why.
Those were
January
dismissed.
6th, those were voluntarily dismissed after he won the election, and it became clear that pursuant to a DOJ memorandum, which has never really been tested in the court of law, that he wouldn't be able to be prosecuted anyway because he was about to return to the White House. That is not to say that those felony indictments were somehow without a basis. And
you see how when the legal system works, these people don't like it when it doesn't have the outcome they desire. But then when it has the outcome they desire, they try to claim that it's perfect. It doesn't make any sense.
Throughout all of these prosecutions, no one has plausibly refuted the fact that he didn't commit the crimes that he has been indicted for.
Yeah, but I think it's
these
better
are Republican talking points.
that those cases, we don't know if he committed those crimes or not
Correct.
because they're not going to trial.
And he's
Actually, in
innocent.
this case,
And
we
he's
know he
innocent until
committed the
proven
crime.
guilty, by the way.
To be clear, we actually do
have
know he did the
finality.
thing on January. We
Until
all saw
he's
that play
found
out.
guilty, we can't say that. But here, he
We
was
saw him
found
refuse
guilty.
to produce classified documents that he took from the Oval Office. I'm just saying, some of this
talk
stuff
about
has
it,
been in
but
plain
a
sight.
jury found him guilty on this case, and there will be no penalty. I think that that's a slap in the face of the justice system. And you did make a point. This was talked about all day, even on this network where they say giving him a fine wouldn't have made a difference because he has so much money. That's a ridiculous argument, right? If you get a speeding ticket and I walk in with thousands of dollars and say, how dare you fine me $200, I have so much money, that won't matter to me. They're going to suspend my license if I don't pay that ticket. You have to have a consequence. So there's no reason why a judge couldn't have said, all right, I know I can't put you in jail, I can't put you on house arrest, you have 34 felonies, but here, even $1 fine, so it can be clear that you are being penalized and there's a consequence for your actions, and it would have been done.
But the martyrdom that would come out of him being penalized and having to pay any sort of fine, in my opinion, it's worth him just walking away and us never having to hear about this again and focusing on the issues that American voters care about.
So speaking of that, I mean,
they don't care about what the American voters care about that much. Is painfully obvious.
Talking about whether he would, he doesn't have to come to New York for the sentencing, but do you think he might consider it?
Yeah, it's a spectacle. Absolutely. You're going to have every camera in the country, probably nearly every camera in the world, focused on the American president going before the court.
10 days before the inauguration.
And he knows he's going to walk out unscathed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's going to walk out with his team. Absolutely.
Yeah, like always, he's going to walk out stronger than ever before.
Victory for him.
Yeah. All right.
How very Roman-esque.
Imagine a victory walk after being convicted of 34
Oh my
felons.
God.
Okay, guys. Well, we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
the witch hunt failed. That's why he would do it, because it would be representative of how the radical leftist, the fake news, the illegitimacy of the legal system, how there were so many failures, and yet it still could not take him down, and therefore it could not take the American people down, because the American people wanted Trump, and we got him, okay? And we're going to have him on January 20th all the way until January 20th of 2028 or 2029 or whatever, and he's going to be the president. This is what we wanted. All of these ridiculous, radical leftist attempts failed because there was never legitimacy to them to begin with. I want to say that even these people on the radical left, most of them know that. They just don't care. They just don't like Trump, so they don't care about the legitimacy. I mean, until the tables turn and then people start throwing BS charges at you, then all of a sudden it's going to be the worst thing ever. But when it's Donald Trump, they're just as happy as can be, and they're like clutching their pearls in glee to see Donald Trump suffer in any sort of way. But I do think that inevitably a lot of this stuff kind of doesn't really matter, because even if the sentencing goes through and Donald Trump does officially become a convicted felon, it's going to be overturned anyway, and then that label is going to go away. And I guarantee you that the fake news, the Democrat politicians and operatives are still going to try to claim, well, he was a convicted felon, because as you could see, what they did with the impeachments that failed to remove Trump from office, they still keep talking about those. Imagine considering that like running a victory lap, failing to successfully impeach and remove, which is the whole point of impeachment, a sitting president. One of the impeachments they tried when he was already on his way out of office. So these people have no moral grounds to stand on. They're unethical. They're evil. They're stupid and dumb as hell. And they are completely incompetent. Otherwise, they would have actually won the damn election. Trump would be in jail, and a bunch of conservatives would be out here crying. Instead, it's the opposite. Instead, they're ready to jump off cliffs. They're cutting their hair off. They're pulling their hair out. They are turning against one another. It's glorious. I'm loving every second of seeing these leftists suffer, and I'm going to enjoy it more and more throughout the entire Trump presidency, and I'm going to enjoy it even more if Kamala Harris tries to run against J.D. Vance. Oh man, it's going to be a cooking with Crisco. But those are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate you watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
The American people soundly rejected this naked partisan politics. If you're watching New York City news right now, you got people being burned on the subway, folks running around with all kinds of violence in their past and not in jail, and the criminal justice system is being used on Donald Trump. Take a hard look at who you're electing. The abuse of the system for political purposes when New York City is descending into a hellhole right now.